I'll just ask that if questions come up for you, the folks who are on Zoom or the recording can't hear you unless you're speaking into a microphone. So we'll try to be in the habit of repeating the question, or we'll walk over real close to you and lean forward. So, all right. So with that, for those of you who may not know me, my name is Sam. I am the community engagement librarian here at the Barrington Area Library. So that means I work with our local nonprofits. So I do programs for the benefit of the nonprofits, like grant writing and storytelling, things like that. And I do programs in conjunction with nonprofits. Go Green Barrington is probably one of my most consistent partners, represented today by Jennifer Lucas. And we've just had a great time doing some programs, and most of those are on Zoom if you're interested in seeing them. We have one on solar power and community solar, electric vehicles, that sort of a thing. So we are very excited today to welcome another community partner, Mindful Waste, who are going to talk to us about composting truths, myths, and how-tos.
All of you for coming, and to all of you listening in from home. We appreciate you being with us today. I'm Renee Blue, and together we co-founded Mindful Waste. I'll wait just a minute here. Okay. Be wherever. Okay. Okay. And oh, thank you. Ready. Thank you. So while we're, oh, there we are. Okay, great. So Mindful Waste was founded out of a desire to reduce, if not eliminate, food waste. We'd love to eliminate food waste, lofty goal, through education, prevention, and recovery. And we aim to do that through community partnership projects like the one we're doing today, and through partnership with the District 220 schools and beyond. We've been able to partner with lots of different communities and community organizations across Chicagoland, and are grateful to do so. And my lovely co-founder, Jennifer Keynes, back here, is a conservation biologist and zoologist and an all-around rock star. She's a vermiculture expert and drives the sort of hard science behind our education efforts.
Renee Blue is the most amazing writer out there, and she is responsible for this whole presentation because this is not my forte. So very talented, and we make a pretty good, solid team.
We like to think so. And we are here with you today for a lot of reasons. We're always looking to disseminate composting education throughout the community and beyond, but we have something special to commemorate and celebrate this week, which is International Compost Awareness Week, which started over the weekend and goes through the 13th. That poster is this year's winning entry to the Compost Awareness Week. We love every year seeing the entries and getting to vote on those. We are proud members of the Illinois Food Scrap and Composting Coalition, and highly recommend that you check out their website for inspiration and education on what's happening across Illinois to advance composting efforts. It's really exciting, and they're involved from a community education level all the way up through policy, driving progress forward in this area, and we're grateful for the work that they do. So we're here today to share with you composting myths, truths, and how-tos. We do get a lot of questions about composting, and there are some, what we've learned, pretty common misunderstandings out there. So hopefully we can clear any of those up today and answer any questions that you might have. So composting is happening all around us all the time, but we just call it decomposition, right? Nature is an expert in this area. So it is the breaking down and transformation of organic material through decomposition into a biologically humus-rich substance suitable for growing plants. It is alive microbially and returns incredible nutrients to the soil and then in turn to your plants. So it is something that we humans have learned to harness the power of. So the problem with how we handle our organic waste as a human population is one that I'm guessing most of you are pretty familiar with, but we separate this organic waste and combine it with other forms of waste and send it to landfills where it breaks down anaerobically. So that means without oxygen. And that anaerobic digestion process anaerobic decomposition process produces methane, which is a greenhouse gas that's 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So that is the main problem with how we currently handle our organic waste as a society. And that's why we need to go back to nature's way of processing organic waste so we can close the loop and return the nutrients to the soil, keep that methane from being produced, and only send to landfills what absolutely needs to be there.
Okay, so this is
climate, we also hear from many people that you can't compost in the winter. So I just do it during the warmer months. We understand that. We also understand that it's not always super attractive to head on out to wherever your compost pile is in the thick of winter. However, you hardy souls who would like to keep going, you can definitely compost all winter long. There are several ways that we can recommend to help you continue to do that. You really just have to be patient. You're not going to get the same rate of decomposition during the winter that you'll get during the warmer months here in Illinois. However, as long as your pile is cooking heading into the winter months, you can certainly keep a pile going. So Jennifer mentioned that a cubic yard is an ideal size for a compost pile. That or larger is going to ensure that you have that hot composting core with the thermophilic, which we're not going to say words like that too often today, bacteria working that'll get you to that temperature and that level of aerobic decomposition that you need to keep your pile going. So you need to have some browns at the ready. A lot of people are good at collecting leaves in the fall and putting them in either garbage bags or some garbage cans out next to your compost. If you have a source of browns at the ready, you're going to be good all winter long, and you're going to thank yourself over and over again when you head out with your greens from your kitchen to your compost pile, because it's super easy for you to just add them in. And you're going to really need to watch that brown to green ratio. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Oh, another myth. We hear this all the time, don't we? Compost stinks, and it really shouldn't. As long as everything is in balance, your food scraps are covered, you're not allowing too many greens or nitrogen sources to clump together. That'll sometimes happen. And if they do, then what you're going to get, and it makes sense if you think about it, you're going to get that anaerobic digestion process happening. That's going to produce the methane that is stinky, that gives compost a bad rap. And then also you sometimes have to think back. Some of us add cooked food scraps to the pile. Did you have any eggs, meats, fats, animal fats in there that could be contributing to your stinky pile? If so, it's not a disaster, but you might need to make sure that they're in really small pieces and or separate them out. Make sure that they're really well mixed. Add additional browns in order to give them some additional TLC and time to decompose. But you generally want to avoid those because of this. Compost attracts animals. We hear about this a lot, particularly from people who are looking to compost in the village or a more population dense area, tend to be really concerned if they can't get the compost a great distance from their home, etc. Will compost sometimes attract animals? It could, yeah, but think about your location when you're doing that. Make sure you're always burying your food scraps, which is good composting practice anyway. You want to make sure that they are covered by a layer of browns always and intermixed with some soil, because you want the microbial cultures from that soil to help with the process. Good question. We haven't gotten into that yet. Thank you for asking. So the question for those at home was, when we say browns, what do we mean? So composting is a balance of browns, so carbon sources like leaves, hay, straw, cardboard, and greens, nitrogen sources, your food scraps, your grass clippings, etc. Weeds. Without the seed heads, you never want to put the seed heads in the compost. So it's keeping those two things in a happy balance so that you get it breaking down at the rate that you're hoping to. Great question. So that if you could go back one quick sec, I'm sorry. So this is on serious lockdown. This, I kind of laughed when I saw this because I'm going to guess that those locks are for raccoons because they can be quite crafty. So this one, nothing's getting in there except for the bugs that you might want to be part of this decomposition process. It's not likely that this high security level compost is necessary in your yard here, but it's a possibility if you find that you need it.
So how to hot compost?
ensuring that things are shredded or chopped, your nitrogen sources.
Good job for kids with grandkids. Scissors, cardboard.
Love that for everyone at home. Great job for kids, grandkids, etc. Yes.
And I thought our cardboard on the last slide, is there any info for, I mean, is cardboard okay, card blank, or is some cardboard treated? That would be the choice.
That's a
That's
good
a good
question. So I like the corrugated cardboard the best because it has the airflow. These for vermicomposting, the worms for. Leaves that you shouldn't walnut. Yeah.
Yeah.
it's Walnut, and there could be another one I'm thinking of, but
Yes, and there's, I mean, nature is going to decompose all of them, but in terms of adding them to a compost pile that you intend to then add to use to amend your garden beds, that's a great question and one that we need to research. We'll get back to you.
Maybe just put the leaves in.
for sure.
You can.
Yeah, yep. For the worms, I like chop them up for them, but in a compost pile, absolutely. Don't waste your time shredding them. They're gonna break down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So you have your greens and you have
I'll interrupt just real quick. I went ahead and Googled it. They say avoid black walnut and eucalyptus primarily because they have a naturally occurring compound that interferes with seed germination.
So that's our hot composting section. Does anybody have questions about hot composting?
Yeah. This plan, you get it ready in your bin one. How does that relate to your 3 bins? Your second bin just for the quote unquote finished?
So I would say like after, the great question, after it's hit that peak temperature, so you hit 130 and now you're seeing it slowly go down, that's when I will move it over to the second bin, because if you're gardening, you're always gonna be wanting to compost. You always want that extra space. So I move it and I let that sit until it totally matures, and you can move it again once the first bin. So, anyone needs any place, that's a lot, and you can literally zip tie them, screw them together, but it's pretty simple, cheap, and efficient way.
World of composting doing to our recycling programs? Like, how do you guys collaborate together? Because a lot of these items I'm putting in my recycling, and I can now start composting. So I'm curious, like, what percentage of the work of, how do you see these shifts happening over time? In terms of how many things we're trying to recycle, right? But we're also, like, this is such an interesting world to me. Now I'm like, I want to start shifting more towards this.
Which is awesome. I mean, that's the goal of, you've probably heard of permaculture, is like keeping everything that you generate on your own property and, figuring out how to manage your waste sustainably in that way. So I'm guessing that you're speaking of cardboard, paper products when you talk about things that could be recycled that instead you're able to put in your compost. I don't know if we're at a tipping point yet of making a dent in the volume of what's recycled versus what's composted on people's home properties. I love to envision a future in which that actually happens. I don't know if we're there yet. We definitely need parallel strategies. We need to keep pursuing the paper and cardboard recycling is at this point really reliable, and there are waste streams that are recycled that are less reliable to recycle and are very recycling is a whole other conversation. It's very resource driven and economics driven, whereas, go forth, use all the cardboard you can in your home compost for sure.
I'll just contribute to that. Like 1.5 years ago, Jennifer and I did a program with Kate Carney from Cook County Forest Preserve called Reducing Waste and Recycling Right. It's on the library's YouTube. You can find it under Garden and Environment. And yeah, I don't think we're in a great deal of danger if there not being enough for them to recycle. Because if you think about it, like big businesses, we're lucky that they're recycling their cardboard instead of just putting it in the trash. It's unlikely that a lot of, your Home Depot is probably not composting, right? And they get a lot of big cardboard boxes.
We could just get like all the pizza boxes of the world headed to a commercial hot composting facility. That would be fantastic. Yes. So if you have a variety of spots and you can choose your placement, I would actually opt for part sun. If it's in full sun, it's hard to control the moisture level in your pile, and jump in if you feel differently. It can dry out and it can become kind of a chore to keep the moisture level, right? You want your compost moisture level to resemble that of like a squeezed out damp sponge. So that's really hard in the summer months to maintain if you're in full sun. If you're in full shade, you can kind of have the opposite problem. But again, if full shade's your only option, just make sure that you're starting your pile with that good level layer that encourages drainage, sticks, something with a lot of good structure to it, so that your pile can drain adequately.
The same with covering it. A lot of people ask, do you cover it? It really depends on, the climate that you're in. If it's raining cats and dogs all the time, then definitely cover it. I tend to cover it and then I look at the forecast and I uncover it and let Mother Nature do her thing. And then if it gets too wet, then I'll just turn it and add more, something. But for the most part, I guess it just depends. I guess it's safer to cover it, but if you're going to ignore it, then you're not going to get the rain.
Yeah, I mean, nature gives us a lot of variables, right? In our climate especially. So go with what makes sense on your own property. And then if you're looking to control more, then cover. But then you have to make sure that you're providing all the water that it needs to keep cooking. Any other hot compost related questions?
Is there such a thing as tree?
Yes. Yeah, I think that goes back to that thermometer is going to be your best friend with helping you determine if you've been at the 130-degree range for a few days in order to kill those weed seeds and seed heads in case you try not to put them in the compost. They make their way in there anyway if you're using your compost for everything.
Yeah. Get more air flow, because if anything, that water is going to take up the space of the air. So yeah, I would definitely do that. And you can also buy a moisture meter, cheap, and you just stick it in. There's no batteries. It just shows you the level of moisture like inside the pile. That can be helpful. And what should that level be? I don't know the measurement. I can't remember, but it'll like these. But like
that's all I know.
Like Renee said, it's like a well wrung out fun. So
I feel like a tip you guys told me about moisture level was if it smells earthy, it's doing the job that it should be doing. So it's less maybe of a moisture meter and measuring and more just when you look, it shouldn't look soggy like when you see grass clippings that get wet and they're all stuck together and it looks soggy. It shouldn't look like that. It should look more like loamy, fluffy, so that it's all working together to break down. And it smells like, I don't know how to describe it, but it smells like earth. Like it doesn't smell stinky. It doesn't smell like earth. It smells like it doesn't smell like the forest floor.
Yeah.
It smells earthy.
Yeah. We have a farmer contingent here today, folks. We're lucky to have them among us. So these are soil friends right here. Yeah. Any other compost questions? These have been great questions. Okay. If you think of any, we can come back to it at any time. So now we're going to move on to another passion of ours and how we met, actually. But that's a story for another day. Composting with worms. Also called vermiculture. We can skip ahead to the next one. Vermi means worm in Latin, and vermicomposting is making compost using worms or harnessing the decomposition power of worms. And it's a brilliant thing to do. And our favorite little composting worms are these red wigglers. They can eat up to their body weight in food every single day. So if you think about what that would require for a human, it is really pretty astounding that they can do that. So, and that's in ideal conditions, which we can go into. But you might read, if you get into this, you might read about black soldier fly or composting with European night crawlers. That there's a whole world of possibility there. Our personal favorites are these red wiggler earthworms.
these are more dactyls with other.
Yeah.
Temperature changes with the European night crawlers they will not tolerate.
Oh, yeah. Maybe even a bit warmer than that. Yeah. So what does a worm farm look like? You can see by these two pictures that are representative of a couple of different worm farms. A worm farm can look a lot of different ways. So on the left there, you have a commercial producer, a commercial worm farm, massive trough-like beds that are producing, probably selling worms and castings at an impressive scale. Then on the right, you have somebody's cute little home worm farm that they're using to reduce waste in their kitchen. And we need both happening, ideally, to help us manage our home food waste. They're much easier to take care of than your dog or your cat. You can go on vacation. And they just do amazing work, and it's such a fun thing to observe happening at home. So what do you need to start a worm bin? And really, I guess ideally we should go back to the first slide, the introductory slide, because it shows a lot that you need, if you don't mind. Yeah, thanks. So here we have, this is something that can definitely be used as a worm bin, and we have some that are almost identical. You can see that holes have been drilled at the top of the worm bin. You need a source of browns, so it's similar to hot composting in that way. See the shredded newspaper or cardboard, as Jennifer said, are their personal favorites. You need something to collect your food scraps in a way that you're mindful of what worms can and can't eat. It's something that you need to manage a little bit more closely than you would your hot compost, because they're things that are not good for worms to eat that you would put in your hot compost. We'll talk more about that. You need your red wigglers. Those are actually Uncle Jim's right there, which is a great source for worms if you're going to order them online. You need some soil. And not pictured there is, we like to use a spray bottle to mist the worms. You don't want to just pour water on them, but they do need to be kept moist for several reasons. They breathe through their skin, so they need to have that layer kept nice and moist in order to stay alive. Thank you, sorry, skipping around. So what can red wigglers eat? Pretty much all manner of fruits and vegetables. Chopped up small, this is, you want to put your kids or grandkids to work again here, chopping them up small. Worms do not have teeth. So the smaller you chop things up, the faster they'll get processed in your bin. They do not like citrus fruits because they can actually kind of be acidic and burn their skin. Garlic, onions, no dairies, meats, animal fats, that. And this is really what it looks like. So you add a layer of food to your bin. Here it's shown over the entire surface of the bin. We actually like to add it to just one side, one corner. They'll finish whatever's interspersed throughout the soil and carbon in their bin, and then they'll go over to wherever the new food source is. And you want to wait until you've seen them finish that. The most common problem with managing a worm bin is that they get overfed. You put too much food in their bin, and then you might get fruit flies visiting or something like that. But if you add it to one corner, check in, make sure that they're finishing it, and also keep it covered with a layer of, I will just moisten a paper bag or paper towel or a piece of kitchen cloth, like a tea towel. You can keep moistened and keep it over them as well. That'll help keep fruit flies away.
I would just want to add, like, this is in the ideal conditions, like
Yeah.
I was saying. They're voracious eaters, no doubt, but it really has to
add a generous handful if I'm vegetable gardening or planting flowers out in the garden, add a handful as you're planting. And then every couple of months, you can top dress right around your plants, just put an inch or so, however many castings you have available to you. If you can do a 6-inch diameter, if you can do a 12-inch diameter around your plant, that's great. And then gently incorporate it into the soil around the plant. And it'll, like Jennifer said, help make your plants more drought resistant and pest resistant through the season. So I'll add it when I'm planting and then probably a couple more times during the course of the growing season. Yeah. They're amazing. Have any questions about vermiculture or using castings? But we have them available. We have a lot.
Anytime you want. Great Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Specific.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't, we're kind of, yeah, we're sad to see them go. No, because we have so many bins that we're just constantly filling, so. But you can always come and pick them out of our compost. It's a fun thing for kids to do, I swear. I mean, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Out, like, we have the compost piles just out behind our little.
Like windrows. Yeah.
The ones inside the actual bins, we don't put the triggers inside. See. For anything else.
Can you talk real quickly about the jumping worm? You know,
Oh,
we've been
gosh.
hearing a lot about that as a problem in this area.
Yeah, so jumping worms are an invasive species of worm that has joined us from Asia, and they look very different from a red wiggler. They're bigger. They have, whereas a red wiggler or a European nightcrawler will have a raised clitellum, jumping worm is more, the clitellum is more smooth and whitish, and they move like a snake. They're kind of alarming. Hopefully you don't witness one in person. If you see one, their movement pattern is S-shaped and they are alarmingly fast, and they will almost like jump sometimes. You know, they're in this, so we get a lot of questions about them because they're in the same size category. I wish they were differentiated in that way, but they're similar size to some other species that I won't say are native, but are, you know, very well integrated into our environment.
They
So
just wipe everything out. Like,
yeah.
they're destroying forests. Our legs. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're not good. And the toughest part, so their cocoons, remember you saw the picture of. Birds that, I mean, not enough to keep them in check. They're just literally, people have said they spread their mulch for like in May and it's gone like by the end of June.
Yeah.
Not being any good for the soil.
No, it's really alarming. What they leave behind is it's granular, like visible to the human eye, kind of granules, and it just looks decimated and lifeless. Like they just take all the organic matter out of the soil. Science fiction made real.
Oh, my family owns a brewery, so.
any questions for us? I know we're past our
No, we're fine.
hour.
We're fine. We say it's an hour. It's never an hour. I do think at this point, I'll probably end the recording online, and we can
Okay.
take a few minutes and look at some of the things you brought. And then for those who wish, and as long as you have time, we'll head up to the teaching garden. I will try and just record on my phone while we're in the teaching garden, and add that to the Zoom recording if I'm able to, so I can post all of it online. But I am not going to attempt to carry my computer outside and turn it around and all those things so that we can capture that. That'll be an add-on for later.
Understood. Well, thank you to those of you who joined us from home.
Yes,
And actually, it's Leslie first.
it is.
Yes, and so thank you, Leslie, for joining us from home. I know that you're a great volunteer for Go Green, and you could hook up with Jennifer and Renee if you ever needed anything.
That is a funky looking last slide.
Yeah.
It was created in Google Slides and downloaded as a PowerPoint, so excuse the formatting there.
We'll make it work. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.